greetings from our channel again. Unquestionably charming and talented, Tony Curtis is a star. Previously swept Hollywood with his glitzy lifestyle and memorable appearances in films like Some Like It Hot and The Defiant ones. However, beneath the stage lights and laughter, his life was filled with unsolved mysteries and tragedies. Have you ever pondered why a famous person who had it all, a successful job, love relationships, and a big family, made the contentious choice to give Jill Vandenberg his entire fortune? His sixth spouse, omitting his kids. Was it the product of some incomprehensible manipulation, or was it genuine love? Let and hashtag 039's examine Tony Curtis and hashtag 039's journey from obscurity to fame, where each triumph came with a cost and where his radiant grin belied dark secrets, particularly the true cause of his controversial will and early life. The eldest child of Emanuel and Helen Schwartz, Jewish immigrants from Hungary who arrived in America during a terrible period in world history, Tony Curtis was born Bernard Schwartz on June 3, 1925, in East Harlem, Manhattan. His mother was from Mykolaiv, Slovakia, and his father was from Opalii, which is close to Matazalka, Hungary. The family endured ongoing hardship during the Great Depression while residing in the Bronx, New York. The family moved into the little room behind his father and hashtag 039's tailor shop, which was claustrophobic but full of survival struggles. Up to the age of 6, Tony was a child who could only speak Hungarian. Due to the language barrier, Tony found it extremely difficult to fit in at school, which caused him to lag behind his peers. His struggles to speak further compounded the difficulties he faced as a child. Additionally, the living conditions did not alleviate poverty. The family always felt stifled and deprived in the small space behind his father and hashtag 039's store. When Tony was 8 years old, he and his brother Julius were placed in an orphanage for a month since the family was unable to support all of their children. Young Tony felt abandoned and resentful after this event. It left a lasting impression of anguish and sadness that followed him all of his life. To make matters worse, his brother Julius was struck by a truck and died 4 years later. At the time, Julius was just 12 years old. Tony never fully recovered from this tragedy, which left him with a persistent sense of shame and duty to keep his family safe. Tony had to deal with a tumultuous family life in addition to financial hardships and the death of loved ones. Helen, his mother, had schizophrenia, which caused her to act erratically and violently. Tony and hashtag 039's early years were a misery due to her uncontrollable outbursts, where safety and love were never considered necessities. He once said that his mother was a very troubled woman who might suddenly respond violently or show tender compassion. But it was also his mother who sowed the seeds of his passion for painting during her periods of lucidity. Tony first experienced the attraction of the movie world, and Helen would frequently take him to the neighborhood theater to see double features. The movies gave young Tony a sense of freedom by allowing him to escape from his harsh reality and substituting lovely fiction for life and hashtag 039's challenges and pains. Tony and hashtag 039's love of movies started to take root after those outings with his mother and grew into a passion that lasted a lifetime. Tony had rheumatic illness when he was 13 and spent a lot of time in bed. Although this was another difficult time in his life, it also gave him a new outlet for his creativity. Tony used painting as a way to express his feelings. When he was physically confined, he devoted time to drawing, expressing his innermost thoughts with each brushstroke. Tony turned to art as a means of expressing his suffering, aspirations, and hopes for a better life. In addition to offering comfort, Tony and hashtag 039's paintings gave people a sense of independence and self-worth. Tony overcame the difficult times of his early years by transforming suffering into beauty and adversity into purpose in each piece. Tony and hashtag 039's life changed in 1941 when Pearl Harbor was attacked. Tony chose to enlist in the U.S. Navy in search of a fresh start and a means of escaping his unfulfilling existence after being influenced by military movies starring Tyrone Power and Cary Grant. In the Pacific Submarine Force, he was assigned to the USS Proteum, a submarine support vessel. Tony gained discipline, patience, and perseverance while at sea, these traits allowed him not only get through a tough existence but also subsequently face the difficulties of the film industry. During his Navy service, Tony and #039's most memorable moment was watching Japan surrender from the USS Proteum in Tokyo Bay on September 2, 1945. Tony will always remember that moment as a turning point in history, a reminder of the strength of tenacity and the dynamic essence of existence. He developed a strong will, discipline, and a broader perspective as a result of his Navy experiences, preparing him for the demanding acting career that lies ahead. Early in life, Tony Curtis experienced many setbacks, tribulations, and memorable occurrences. He developed a steel-like resolve and a deep love of the arts as a result of these hardships, which set the stage for his difficult but glitzy ascent to stardom in Hollywood. Early career. Tony Curtis signed a deal with Universal Studios to launch his career, which gave him the chance to play supporting parts and progressively establish his reputation in the movie business. Alongside Yvonne De Carlo, he performed a rumba dancer in Criss Cross, 1949, in his first uncredited performance. Although it was a modest start, it was sufficient to begin leaving an impact on producers and viewers. After that, he starred in City Across the River, 1949, for the first time. At that point, he took on the charming and witty stage name Anthony Curtis, which was appropriate for a movie star. Curtis then started getting bigger parts in movies like The Lady Gambles and Johnny Stoolpigeon. In 1950, he furthered his acting career by making appearances in I Was a Shoplifter, Woman in Hiding, and Francis. The opportunity to star in the Middle Eastern adventure movie The Prince, Who Was a Thief in 1951 was a significant turning point in Tony Curtis and #039 career and cemented his status as a top star. Curtis enthralled viewers with his talent, with his self-assured acting and innate charisma. Due to the movie and #039's box office success, Curtis went from playing minor supporting parts to being the main character, prepared for future roles that are bigger and more complicated. In order to broaden his acting career, Tony also starred in a number of movies at this time, including Son of Alibaba, Douglas Sirk and #039's comedy No Room for the Groom, and the boxing drama Flesh and Fury, 1952. Curtis and #039's notoriety was further enhanced by his co-starring role with Janet Leigh in the 1953 movie Houdini, while simultaneously igniting a well-known romance with Leigh off-screen. These parts served as more than just acting opportunities, they helped Tony Curtis gain a deeper understanding of both the film industry and consumers. Learning to ride a horse and fence for future responsibilities taught him to embrace challenges and put in a lot of effort to improve his abilities. Curtis became one of the most recognizable figures in the industry thanks to the range of roles he played, which demonstrated his versatility in humor, drama, action, and adventure. Tony Curtis and #039's natural skill, diligence, and unwavering willpower allowed him to progressively become a Hollywood A-list star who was capable of handling any obstacle the motion picture business threw at him. Prosperous career. Tony Curtis, one of Hollywood and #039's most gifted and endearing performers of the 1950s and 1960s, immediately rose to fame thanks to his early performances. After starring in the light-hearted musical So This Is Paris in 1955, he went on to act in a number of movies, including the adventure movie The Purple Mask and the bank robber role in Six Bridges to Cross. Curtis and #039's reputation was further solidified by these assignments, which made him one of Hollywood and #039's most important faces at the time. Tony Curtis and #039's portrayal of sly and crafty publicist Sidney Falco in the 1957 movie The Sweet Smell of Success marked a major turning point in his career. This movie showed that Curtis was capable of more than only playing endearing, romantic parts. He was also capable of portraying characters that needed nuance and complexity in their psychology. Critics praised Curtis for his realistic and vibrant performance, signifying a significant turning point in his acting career. However, Tony Curtis and #039's most well-known and successful part was in the 1959 film Some Like It Hot, which co-starred Jack Lemmon and Marilyn Monroe. Curtis portrayed a musician in the movie who poses as a woman in order to elude the mafia. His performance offered audiences delightful and funny moments, as well as some lighthearted commentary about identity and love. In addition to being regarded as one of the best comedies ever made, this movie made Curtis a Hollywood A-list star and elevated his reputation to a new level. At about the same period, Tony Curtis participated in a variety of film genres, demonstrating his versatility as an actor. Alongside Cary Grant, he played a soldier in the 1959 war comedy Operation Petticoat, offering the ideal balance of humor and action. Being a huge hit, the movie cemented Curtis and #039's reputation among both moviegoers and industry insiders. Curtis and #039's performance in the epic movie Spartacus 1960, in which he portrayed Antoninus, a figure with a complicated relationship with Laurence Olivier, and #039's character, was another significant turning point in his career. Despite being omitted from the first release, the well-known scene involving Curtis and Olivier demonstrated Curtis and #039's bravery and audacity in accepting difficult parts and defying social expectations. Tony Curtis wasn't #039's just a comedy or adventure filmmaker. He also played dramatic and tragic parts. A good example is the 1958 movie The Defiant Ones, in which he co-starred with Sidney Poitier. He was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor for this role, and won admiration for his genuine and profound acting skills from both critics and co-workers. Curtis and #039's popularity extended beyond the big screen. He dabbled with television as well. He co-starred with Roger Moore in the television series The Persuaders in 1971. Despite its brief run, the series helped Curtis get more recognition and solidified his reputation as an actor who could adapt to a variety of entertainment mediums. Tony Curtis underwent constant self-transformation during his prosperous career, pushing himself to take on new and varied roles. In addition to being a charming figure, he was a very brilliant actor who was dedicated to the acting profession. Because of this, he was able to thrive in the cutthroat and demanding Hollywood industry in addition to surviving. Personal life: Tony Curtis had storms and difficulties in addition to passionate relationships behind the glamour of stage lights and big-budget movies. Curtis had 6 marriages with various ladies, each of which had its own history and impact, ranging from devastating failures to sweetly happy times. In 1950, while both actors were at the height of their careers, Tony Curtis met and started dating actress Janet Leigh. A well-liked celebrity, Janet Leigh was renowned for her grace and acting prowess, particularly for her part in Alfred Hitchcock and #039's iconic Psycho. In 1951, Tony and Janet made the decision to be married after becoming a couple that garnered media attention in Hollywood at the time. The press hailed Curtis and Leigh and #039's union as Hollywood and #039's and quote, golden marriage and quote, making it a centerpiece of the entertainment business. In addition to attending important events together, they co-starred in a number of movies, including 1953 and #039's Houdini, in which they portrayed a married couple and brought a dramatic and enigmatic love story to the big screen. There was passion and sweetness in Curtis and Leigh and #039's romance. Tony recently revealed that Janet Leigh was the one who made his heart race. They spent joyful times together on California beaches, strolling in the golden sun and finding serenity amidst the chaos of celebrity. The demands of employment and media attention, however, were too much for this marriage to handle. Tony likewise sought the limelight of his work, whereas Janet Leigh, who was well-known and prosperous, had to manage her hectic schedule. As Tony and #039's infidelity increased and reports of his extramarital affairs spread, tensions started to rise. There was some truth to the rumors. Despite his reputation as a charming and attractive man, Tony Curtis was unable to resist the attraction of short-lived romances. His relationship with Janet Leigh deteriorated over time as a result of this. Additionally, Tony occasionally questioned Janet and #039's faithfulness, particularly in light of allegations that she was seeing well-known singer Frank Sinatra. Tony and #039's jealousy and suspicions only made their relationship more tense, even though there was no proof of an affair between Janet and Frank. They ultimately made the decision to separate in 1962, bringing an end to one of Hollywood and #039's most successful marriages. Many admirers regretted this split, but it was also a cost of Tony and #039's erratic behavior and adultery. Tony Curtis swiftly started seeing Christine Kaufman, his co-star in Terrace Bulba, shortly after divorcing Janet Leigh. A guy looking for solace after his failing marriage fell in love with Christine Kaufman, a German actress who was 19 years younger than Curtis. Curtis and #039's life took a new turn in 1963 when he married Kaufman. At first, there was love and hope in this relationship. The couple had 2 children, Allegra and Alexandra, and Curtis and Kaufman had a good time together. But over time, their relationship became strained due to lifestyle contrasts and the demands of celebrity. Curtis was unable to break free from his previous routines and personal problems, such as his drug and alcohol misuse. Christine finally found this intolerable, and they made the decision to split up in 1968. In 1968, a model 20 years his junior, Tony had 2 kids, Nicholas and Benjamin, with Leslie. But this marriage also failed because of Curtis and #039's personal problems, namely his addiction and chaotic lifestyle. They decided to get a divorce in 1982 since their disagreements could no longer be resolved. Tony Curtis was once more enmeshed in a pattern of brief love affairs and unsuccessful marriages. Curtis married Andrea Savio in 1984, however their union was short-lived. They made the decision to part ways in 1992. He quickly married Lisa Deutsch, an attorney who is not in the entertainment business, because he didn't and #039's give up on finding happiness. But after only 18 months, their union terminated abruptly, just like his other marriages. And his fatigue grew with each unsuccessful marriage. Jill Vandenberg, Curtis and #039's sixth wife, was 45 years younger than him when they were married in 1998. Before becoming a horse trainer, Jill worked as a model. The two established a rescue ranch together despite their stark age difference because they shared a love of saving stray animals. Tony Curtis appeared to experience some last moments of tranquility after getting married to Jill Vandenberg, which made his life more peaceful. Tony Curtis battled addiction in addition to his turbulent romances and marriages. He developed an alcohol and painkiller addiction in the 1970s. His job and personal life were severely impacted by his substance abuse and careless lifestyle. Fans and the media both criticized Curtis when he seemed drunk at public gatherings. In addition to harming his reputation, this also caused tension in his relationships, particularly with his kids. Curtis made the decision to get treatment by the middle of the 1980s and enrolled in the Betty Ford Center and #039's rehabilitation program. This was a pivotal moment that enabled him to rebuild his life and achieve stability. Curtis discovered that rehabilitation at Betty Ford was more than just stopping drugs, it also involved confronting ingrained problems and learning to love and forgive oneself. But the biggest hurt Curtis had was when his son Nicholas died of a heroin overdose in 1994. Curtis and #039's life was left with a great gap due to this irreplaceable loss. Losing Nicholas made him face the brutal reality of the family problems he had ignored during his years of addiction and celebrity, and he acknowledged that he had not been a good father to his kids. Tony Curtis made an effort to keep his relationship with his kids positive despite the chaos and setbacks in his personal life. Notably, he was frequently praised and loved for his bond with Jamie Lee Curtis, his daughter with Janet Leigh, who would go on to become a well-known Hollywood star. Although her father was and #039's the finest dad, Jamie Lee Curtis acknowledged that he had tried his hardest to love and care for his kids. Career in painting. Following his recovery from addiction, Tony Curtis chose to concentrate on painting, another of his passions. When he was young and bedridden with rheumatic disease, he sought comfort in drawing, which sparked his love of painting. Curtis spent more time creating art in his later years, adopting a style influenced by famous painters like Picasso, Matisse, and Van Gogh. Curtis and #039's talent and inventiveness were not limited to the film business, as seen by the exhibition of his most well-known piece, The Red Table, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a huge distinction for any artist. Curtis did not give up performing entirely, save from painting. He played his last part in the movie David and Fathom, where he returned to the modest ideals he had always valued and honored his heritage by using his previous surname, Schwartz. Curtis made the emotional decision to end his acting career by reminding everyone of his beginnings and background. Controversial will and death. At the age of 85, Tony Curtis died in Las Vegas on September 29, 2010. One of Hollywood and #039's biggest performers passed away due to a weakening heart after years of battling health problems. He died quietly, bringing an end to a complicated existence that was full of highs and lows and triumphs. But shortly after his passing, disputes about his will surfaced, leading to a court case between his daughter and his sixth wife, Jill Vandenberg, and his offspring from past unions. Tony Curtis changed his will before he passed away, which was a startling and completely unanticipated development for his loved ones. His sixth wife, Jill Vandenberg, received his whole wealth, valued at approximately $60 million, according to his new will. His children from prior marriages received nothing. This choice led to a great deal of confusion, disillusionment, and rage, and resulted in an intense court battle between Jill and Curtis and #039 children, especially his daughter Allegra Curtis from his second marriage to Christine Kaufman. Allegra Curtis and a few other family members thought their father had been tricked into making a last-minute will change when he was no longer able to make wise choices. They asserted that Jill Vandenberg had influenced Curtis by taking advantage of his deteriorating health in his last years, making certain that she would be the only heir. Allegra chastised Jill in public, saying that this choice did not accurately represent Tony Curtis and #039's intentions and affections for his kids. Curtis and #039's last wife, Jill Vandenberg, who was 45 years younger than him, supported his choice. It was Curtis and #039's wish, she insisted. He thought his children were all grown and able to support themselves, and he wanted her to have a happy life once he was gone, not depending on his property. Jill stressed that Curtis had bequeathed the entire estate to her as a token of his appreciation and love for her, as she had been there for him during his last years, helping him through his health issues. Arguments from both parties were made in court during the months-long legal dispute. Allegra and Kelly Curtis, Curtis and #039's daughter with Janet Leigh, in particular, offered testimony and proof that his will had been altered under improper influence. Allegra stated that she was close to her father and found it hard to comprehend Curtis and #039's decision to completely cut off his children from his wealth. Jill Vandenberg and her attorneys, meantime, tried to demonstrate that Curtis had altered his will willingly and free from coercion. When Curtis altered his will, they produced testimony from his physician, who attested to the fact that he was still able to make decisions and was cognizant. Jill also disclosed that she had no control over Curtis and #039's choices and that his relationship with his kids had soured in his latter years. Jill Vandenberg and #039's sale of Tony Curtis and #039's priceless personal possessions, including memorabilia from his life and career, was one of the case and #039's most contentious elements. The jacket from Some Like It Hot, letters Curtis wrote to co-workers, and numerous priceless pieces of art were among the items. Approximately 500 items were put up for auction, and Jill made a sizable profit from the occasion. Curtis and #039's children became even more enraged as a result. Allegra Curtis openly opposed the auction, arguing that the family should have retained these emotional artifacts as keepsakes to honor their father. She also said that selling Curtis and #039's artifacts was insulting to his legacy and questioned the auction and #039's integrity. But Jill and the auction organizers said that Tony had chosen what would be sold and that they were only doing as he asked. In the end, Jill Vandenberg was the only heir to Tony Curtis and #039's estate following a great deal of debate and legal action. whereas his children did not inherit anything from their father. Although a tiny amount of money was given to some of Curtis and #039's grandkids, it was insufficient to purchase any of the artifacts that were up for auction. The Curtis family, especially Allegra and Kelly, believed their attempts to defend their rights had been in vain, and this result left them feeling deeply disappointed and unhappy. Decided not to speak and did not take part in the court case. Jamie Lee said she didn't and #039 need to contest her father and #039's estate because she was financially stable and had accomplished professional success. She was very different from her siblings in that she did not harbor any animosity toward her father and #039's choice. Even though Jill Vandenberg prevailed and became the only successor, Tony Curtis and #039's legacy was permanently marred by the judicial battle. As a prominent Hollywood celebrity clouded by arguments about money and inheritance, Curtis and #039's reputation was damaged by the scandals, arguments, and divides within the family. This was a sad way to end the life of a guy who had made so many contributions to the arts and who always tried to get through life and #039's challenges. A multifaceted individual with a turbulent life, Tony Curtis left behind not only iconic movies but also a tale of adversity, triumph, and profoundly human failings. His legacy will live on in Hollywood history, a place where greatness occasionally has to deal with the difficult obstacles of personal life and where glitz and darkness coexist. I appreciate you watching. To ensure you don't and #039 miss out on more fascinating content, remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Tell us what you think by leaving a comment. I and #039 LL see you in the upcoming video. Farewell.